Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a landscape that is honestly one of the most recognizable, legendary spots on the entire planet. We're talking about Monument Valley. Now, it's sitting right there on the Arizona and Utah border, entirely within the Navajo Nation. And the thing you've got to understand right off the bat is that you simply cannot separate the dramatic geology of this place from its deeply rooted living culture. They are just fundamentally intertwined. So let's dive right in and center on the Navajo perspective. The name for this area is Tsé Bii Ndzisgaii, which actually translates beautifully and perfectly to Valley of the Rocks. It's super straightforward, right? But it's also incredibly evocative. It immediately grounds us in the reality of the landscape. Long before this spot became a global tourist destination or a famous backdrop on a movie screen, it was recognized and named by the people who live there for its absolute most awe-inspiring feature: the rocks themselves.
Moving right along to Section 1, the geography, the Valley of Rocks.
Okay, when we talk about the Valley of the Rocks, we really need to wrap our heads around the scale here. 305. That is a massive number when you're talking about sheer rock rising up from a completely flat surface. These aren't just your average hills or gentle slopes. The towering sandstone buttes that define Monument Valley rise as much as 305 meters straight up above the valley floor. Just imagine standing on that flat desert earth and looking up and up and up at a vertical wall of rock over 300 meters high. It's this dramatic, stark contrast between the flat valley and these towering monoliths that completely shapes the legendary status of this desert wonder. It totally dominates your field of vision.
Next up, Section 2, the origins, science and Navajo legend.
There are actually two fascinating ways to look at how this landscape came to be. On the scientific side, that iconic blazing red hue, well, that's a chemical reality. It comes from iron oxide and manganese embedded deep inside the sandstone. Literally, it's rust painting the desert over millions of years. But on the flip side, Navajo legend tells this totally different, yet equally powerful story about the famous Mitten Buttes. According to the legend, these aren't just eroded rocks. They are the scattered hands of a giant who was defeated in a great epic battle. So you've got the cold, hard chemistry of iron oxide on one hand, pun intended, and a sweeping cultural myth on the other. Both offer us such a profoundly enriching way to appreciate the immense presence of these formations.
Which brings us to Section 3, the cinematic legacy, Hollywood's Wild West backdrop. Take a look at John Ford's Point. Today, it's one of the area's most photographed viewpoints. But stop and think about that for a second. Why on earth is a specific sweeping rock outcropping in the Navajo Nation named after a Hollywood film director? Well, it's because the image of Monument Valley was essentially broadcast to the entire world from this exact vantage point. It became the definitive lens through which millions of people imagined the American West. And that is all thanks to one director's vision. John Ford is largely responsible for turning these 305-meter rocks into cinema history by featuring Monument Valley heavily in absolute classics like Stagecoach and The Searchers. By repeatedly using this unique, dramatic landscape, Ford basically cemented Monument Valley as the visual shorthand for the Wild West. When people closed their eyes and pictured cowboys, outlaws, and the frontier, they weren't picturing just any random desert. They were picturing the iron oxide red sand and the towering buttes of Monument Valley. The movies literally exported this valley to the world, permanently burning it into our collective pop culture memory.
All right, Section 4, the experience. Experiencing the valley today.
So how do you actually experience all this today? Well, there are two primary paths you can take, and they offer very different layers of understanding. You can take the accessible route, which is a 27-kilometer self-guided scenic drive. It's a fantastic way to witness the sheer majesty of landmarks like the Mitten Buttes or John Ford's Point at your own pace. But if you want to go beyond a surface, you can join a Navajo-led tour. This is a real game changer because it gives you access to hidden sites completely off the main public road. Plus, you get to hear the history of Tsé Bii Ndzisgaii directly from the people whose living culture is intimately tied to the land. You get to step away from the cinematic myth and step directly into authentic, lived history.
If there is one key takeaway to keep in mind, it's this. Here, every rock formation carries its own story. Whether we're talking about the geological erosion of manganese and iron oxide over millennia, the cinematic story of John Ford shaping Hollywood history, or those profound Navajo legends of ancient giants, this isn't just empty space. It is a dense, heavily layered environment. No matter how you choose to see it, it is absolutely vital to remember that in this valley, the physical geology and the living culture are one and the same. Every single monument tells a piece of that story.
So after unpacking the physical scale, the cinematic history, and the Navajo legends in this explainer,
I want to leave you with a final thought for your own future journey. When you finally stand on that flat valley floor, looking 305 meters up at those red sandstone monoliths, what story will the rocks tell you?